Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 97 Republic YouTube channel, where I react to UFC news, live events, basically just anything related to the UFC. So I kindly ask that if you enjoy the video, a friendly reminder to click the like button. If you want to become a part of this channel, feel free to click the subscribe button. And if you don't want to miss out on anything, you want to stay up to date, feel free to click the notification bell. All of this really contributes to the growth of this channel. I would really appreciate it, and I hope you enjoy this one. Reacting to UFC 314, where we saw Big Daddy V, Big Daddy Volk regain his title at featherweight, making history as the only fighter within the UFC ever to fight at 155 pounds or lower over the age of 35, fight in a title fight and actually win said title fight. And everything surrounding this fight, the build-up of this fight, the history surrounding Volk, surrounding his year layoff, just made this achievement, that much better. But we'll get into that at the end of the video. Just want to talk about UFC 314 in general before I go and look at the early prelims. Honestly, felt like it was a good card. It genuinely felt like a really, really good card. And a lot of attention, a lot of hype surrounded UFC 314 due to the fact that we had insane matchups. We had storylines, Bryce Mitchell, Gene Silva. We had the debut of Patricia Pitbull. We had the Volkanovski, potentially the Volkanovski of old, reappearing and fighting for the featherweight title. Ilya pulling out, Diego Lopes taking his spot. So we had everything with regards to this UFC 314 card, and honestly, I feel like it didn't disappoint. If we look at the early prelims, felt like it was entertaining all the way through up until the main event. Now, when looking at the early prelims, first fight we had Cornell versus Cowan. If you're a betting man, Owen, you know, whenever you see a fighter miss weight, you could take out a loan and put it on that fighter. Now, this is not financial advice, but we've seen more often than not a fighter miss weight and win their fight just due to the fact that they don't have to go through the weight cut. Their body readjusts way quicker. We've seen that the cardio translates better. We've seen that even the chin holds up that much better. And they do lose. We saw you on top versus Rufi. Just goes to show how good Mauricio Rufi potentially is. We've seen fighters miss weight and lose, but more oftentimes than not, they win. That is why it is such a big talking point with regards to the UFC. Is is the repercussions fighters have to face whenever they miss weight, because it is such a massive advantage not to go through that weight cut as intense as your opponent had to, right? But anyway, we saw Cornell win. And then we saw Cornell in her Octagon interview be perplexed about why people was booing. Because you must wait. Because you had a considerable advantage heading into this fight. But yeah, it is what it is. Cornell won, deservedly so. And we move on to the next fight. We had Tresean Gore and Marco Tulio. An insane first round. Honestly, one of the best first rounds I've seen in recent memory. Where Marco Tulio was just pounding Tresean Gore, and then Tresean Gore actually rocked him, starched him at the somewhat end of the round. And when I saw this fight, I thought Marco Tulio was in trouble due to the fact that it felt like he expended a lot of energy with regards to the way he strikes. I didn't feel like that was sustainable just because he throws a lot of volume backed by a lot of power, and I felt like he might have been in trouble as this fight progressed. And you know, it wasn't the best take, just due to the fact that second round Tulio came out and really put a beating on Tresean Gore. Tresean Gore looking like he just wanted to survive, and then Marco Tulio got the knockout victory. Then we head into the next fight, which was at flyweight, Sumadarji versus Mitch Raposa. And Probably the most least entertaining fight of this entire card. And a lot of people said it was boring. I can understand people thinking that it was boring or having that opinion. Just feel like people nowadays want to watch kickboxing with UFC gloves. Yeah, it just wants to see people get laid out flatlined like Bryce Mitchell did against Josh Emmett. I honestly enjoy, the finer things. Sumadaji versus Mitch Raposo. The fact that Sumadaji is exceptionally tall for flyweight. How Mitch would have handled that, and then just seeing that Mitch didn't, handle it at all, due to the fact that Sumadaji was piecing him up from the outside. Mitch really struggled to find an entry. Whenever he found an entry, he used it to take Sue down. And listen, if you thought Mitch Raposo won this fight, if you could say that with a straight face, we need to have a discussion surrounding this, because two judges scored it for Sumadaji and one scored it for Mitch Raposo, which it just showcases how much of a disagreement we are in with regards to how we judge fights. There is no way Mitch Raposo won this fight. None. None whatsoever. You could say, well, he scored takedowns. The average time it took Sumadaji to stand up was 8 seconds. With regards to mixed martial arts, that is the speed of light. Okay, standing up 8 seconds, an average time of 8 seconds after you get taken down, means that the takedown itself is redundant, should be null and voided. And we saw Sumadaji constantly move forward, octagon control. We saw him do more damage, which is, somewhat the essence of what mixed martial arts is all about, is inflicting damage, inflicting pain. We saw Mitch bleeding. Sumadaji looked like he was coming out of a shower. That's how fresh he looked after the fight. Mitch Raposa did not win a single round in that fight. Not one. And a judge gave him the fight. And said judge got paid for that decision. It is insane. It is honestly insane. But then afterwards we saw Chase Hooper against Jim Miller. Once again, I thought a really entertaining fight. Insane jiu-jitsu on display with regards to Chase Hooper, Jim Miller. But a lot of people thought it was boring. Do not see how that fight was boring. We saw, transitions and positions I haven't seen yet within the UFC. And high level Brazilian Jiu Jitsu Chase Hooper, high level Brazilian Jiu Jitsu Jim Muller. I thought it was insane. Chase Hooper winning the fight, Octagon interview, said he was gooning. Didn't know what it was. I don't know what gooning is. And then I went to the comment section, and I wouldn't say that I'm that much better off knowing what it is. Now, if you don't know what it is, do not Google it. It's basically, if you, with regards to male, the male perspective, if you had to grab the turkey by the neck, that's basically the gist of what that is. He said his forearms hurt. That should give you another indication as to what this is. Anyway, Chase Hooper beat Jim Miller. Thought it was an impressive victory. Now we have to start seeing Chase Hooper against guys relatively his age, because he fought Clay Guida, beat up Clay Guida, beat Jim Miller. Now we can have Chase against, you know, other lightweights that are within that same age bracket, please. And then after that, or actually prior to that fight, we saw Cedric Dumas against Mikhail Olechechuk, and Mikhail Olechechuk getting the victory. I don't want to say it because it might sound disrespectful. It looked like Cedric didn't have any business being in that cage with Mikhail Olechechuk. And the only reason I say that is every time Mikhail loaded up, we saw Cedric cover up like It was raining like it was Sodom and Gomorrah. We saw him cover up and basically just, go into a shell. Every time Mikel, just fainted, it looked like Dumas was scared of the damage. I'm just gonna say it looked like he was scared. However, props to him. I mean, guys in the UFC. But we saw Mikel knock him down, get the TKO victory, and then we saw Cedric, wanting to protest. Ah, yeah, no protest needed. That knockout TKO victory was justified. Ref stopping that fight, brother. There was no way that you were gonna go. Um, you know, Mikhail Chechuk just pounded and continuously pounded and teed off on you, and you just covered up. Yeah, there was no progression towards, maybe finding your feet, maybe trying to change the situation, change the scenario itself. Valid stoppage. Talk about another, valid stoppage. Darren Elkins, Julian Erosa. It felt like that fight played out in slow motion. It felt like I was watching heavyweights in a smaller frame. And it's because, Darren Elkins is at the latter end of his career. Julian Rosa himself is somewhat of a seasoned vet. So we saw Darren Elkins look, somewhat decent, and then he ate that up kick and just went south. From there on, it just went south. Julian Rosa really applied pressure and was able to get the TKO victory over Darren Elkins. And I'm gonna get back to this fight later on. And later on meaning now. We saw the Dan Ige versus Sean Woodson fight as the main event of the prelims, right? And we saw the stoppage. Now, it was an early stoppage. I'm not gonna say that it wasn't. Was definitely an early stoppage. However, I think there's reasoning behind why we saw that early stoppage. Now, if you let me explain, I think referees, much like fighters, watch other fights and analyzes other referees, right? So a fighter would watch his opponent, watch fights of his opponent, and then see what's his opponent's tendencies. And I think a referee, I think they do the same thing. I think they watch fights and they see how certain referees handle certain situations, how they, react to certain situations. And we saw last weekend, we saw Drew Dober in the first round, somewhat of the first exchange, getting knocked down by Manuel Torres. And we saw Manuel Torres just continuously pounding on Drew's face with those hammer fists to the side. And then we saw eventually the referee stop the fight. And when he stopped it, we saw that Drew was out of it. It could have been stopped way earlier. And even Drew Doe himself said that the lights was on, but there was no one home. And then we saw it take place in the Julian Erosa Darren Elkins fight as well. We saw Darren Elkins get hurt, launched towards the feet, grabbed hold of Juicy J's feet, and then we saw Julian Erosa do the same thing, just a hammer fist to the side of the face, and then eventually we saw the referee stop it, and then we came to the realization, to the conclusion, it could have been stopped way earlier, because Darren Elkins looked flatlined. And I think this is the reason why we saw the early stoppage. I think because maybe that referee saw the Darren Elkins fight, saw the Drew Dober fight, saw that whenever a guy gets hurt, because Woodson was hurt, lunges towards the feet and continuously all the legs and continuously eats the hammer fist to the side of the head, might end up being, you know, unnecessary damage applied. And I think that's why the ref stopped it. Now, it was a bad stoppage, right? If fighters want to go out on this shield, and we saw reactions of a lot of fighters. Henry Cejudo was one. Derek Brunson was one. We saw them say it was a bad stoppage, and I agree it was a bad stoppage. However, I don't see Sean Woodson, especially knowing now that Sean was down on the scorecards. Um, he wouldn't have won that fight. He could have. Maybe he bounced back, and maybe he put a beating on Dan Ige. Maybe he ended up knocking down Dan Ige and knocking him out. It could have happened. However, I think that is the problem. Is fighters feel like they have the right to see how it would have played out, and I don't disagree. However, I don't think that it would have made a difference with regards to the result. And then we moved on to the main card. Dominic Reyes versus Nikita Krylov opening up the main card of UFC 314. And with regards to my prediction, I thought Nikita Krylov would win this fight just due to the fact that I thought Nikita had more ways of winning this fight. If this fight had to go to a decision, I thought Nikita would outscore Dominic Reyes just due to the fact that he constantly moves forward, often throws more than Dominic Reyes does, has grappling, would probably take Dominic down at some point, score better. I thought he could win via submission as well. I thought that he had the potential of submitting Dominic Reyes, and I thought he could have won by knockout. So I thought he just had more ways to victory with regards to beating Dominic Reyes than Dominic had with regards to beating Nikita Krylov. But however, with this being said, I did I did see Nikita Krylov with regards to his fights when he fought Volkan Ozdemir, when he fought, Ryan Spann. I saw him lunge forward a lot. You know, somewhat somewhat lunge forward, I'd say, in a dangerous manner. Not really methodical, just blitzing. And I thought it could have been a problem. I thought him blitzing Dominic Reyes could have been a problem. And it was. Because Dominic, when he fought Dustin Jacoby, we saw Jacoby move forward and we saw Jacoby wanting to blitz Dominic Reyes, and then Dominic just caught him with a straight left, which set everything in motion for Dominic Reyes to beat Dustin Jacoby. And he caught Nikita Krylov with the exact same left that he caught Dustin Jacoby with. We saw Krylov blitz. Um, you know, we saw him move forward, saw him lunge forward, blitz Dominic Reyes, and Dominic just uncorked that straight left and ended up knocking Nikita Krylov out cold. Out cold. And I don't want to say I saw it coming, but I saw that it could potentially be a way that this fight ended. However, I did back Nikita Krylov to win. Honestly, insane performance by Dominic Reyes. He had Nikita hurt earlier the round as well, but then didn't apply pressure. I thought that maybe that was the wrong decision. Maybe he should have, pounced on that hit. Didn't. Was cool, calm, collected. Waited for another opening. Got that opening, and then just proceeded to lay Nikita out flat. And honestly, I think because I've had Dominic Reyes knockouts and I've seen the knockouts. I think this is his most spectacular knockout without a doubt. The Dustin Jacoby one was insane. I think this one's better. It's just cleaner. Knocked Nikita out cold. Well, not out cold, but he was out of it, and it just good performance by Dominic Reyes. Then proceeded to qualify for a title fight. Insane. Dominic, really happy. Really glad that you are making your comeback, that we see this resurgence. But you'll probably have to fight either Khalil Roundtree, Jamal Hill, Yuri Prohashka, Carlos Ulberg, those guys, to then beat them and then potentially fight, Big Unk at the pinnacle of the 205 division. And then in the next fight, saw this coming. Yeah, I saw this coming from months ago. Gene Silva versus Bryce Mitchell. Now, throughout the week, as the week gradually went on, I saw a lot of people actually edging Bryce Mitchell to win this fight. I made a video about 2 months ago when Gene Silva knocked out Melsick Bagdasaryan. We saw Gene Silva, call out Bryce Mitchell. And I said, and I quote, if I was Bryce Mitchell, I would not pick up that phone if I get called by the UFC. I would toss my phone away and I would change my name and surname due to the fact that I saw the UFC wanted to make this fight. As soon as Gene Silva beat Melsick Bagdasaryan, I knew the UFC wanted to make this fight, especially after the call out. And I said, I do not see Bryce winning this fight. Stylistically, he just doesn't match up well against Gene Silva. Due to the fact that Gene Silva is he's a power puncher, a very explosive puncher. However, he's not a brawler. He is extremely methodical with the way that he strikes. Doesn't throw a lot of volume. He is extremely efficient whenever he strikes. He caught Bryce Mitchell with the same left hook straight right that he ended up catching Melsick Bagdasaryan and knocked down Melsick Bagdasaryan. In this fight, Gene Silva didn't just want to beat Bryce Mitchell. He wanted to show that he is on a completely different level. He wanted Bryce to actually try and take him down, just so that he could show that it wasn't that easy. He wanted to stand up with Bryce. He wanted to submit Bryce Mitchell, who is renowned for his submissions. I mean, the guy has a twister submission within the UFC. So, Gene Silva wanted this fight to play out exactly in the manner that it did. And he was comfortable throughout the entire fight. Even when Bryce took Gene down, stood up. He just stood up immediately. The same thing he did against Charles Jourdain. This is not hype. Gene Silva is not hype. This is ability. There's a massive difference. Hype referring to could potentially. He's already doing it. He is already on a different level. He is already on a, I'd say, top 7, top 5 level within the featherweight division. He has really good striking, has a lot of power. He is a massive frame for a featherweight. He has a dense bone structure, a big guy for featherweight. He's not going to get taken down at will. He won't get outstruck. Maybe would get outstruck with regards to points. With regards to power, not a lot of people within the featherweight division that has the power that Gene Silva has. The only thing stopping Gene Silva from being a perennial top 5 is probably the fact that he has weird antics, especially within the octagon where he looks away and speaks to other people. You just stay focused. You will not be able to do that against the likes of Brian Ortega, Yair Rodriguez, Lerone Murphy, Josh Emmett. You will not. You will end up losing years of your life. And then obviously, I don't want to say it, he seems a bit odd. Like, respectfully, I think Gene Silva is on the spectrum somewhere. Because the weird dog noises, the hanging off the cage, he just seems odd. And I don't think that resonates with a lot of people. We He actually ended up getting, booed and received a weird reception from the crowd. Just if I was his manager, I'd just tell him to, just don't say anything. Don't bark. Don't say anything because it sounds a little bit corny. Just fight. Because if we look at his fights, if we only take his fights into account, the guy's insane. The guy is genuinely insane, and he made it look easy against Bryce Mitchell. He ended up submitting Bryce Mitchell, and he submitted him, choked him out cold, which is insane. As fast as he did, he's as well rounded as it probably gets. He is efficient. He doesn't gas himself out, even knowing that he is a power puncher, and they tend to it tends to wear on a fighter. if he is as explosive, puts everything in his shots. However, with the amount of volume that he doesn't throw, he is able to continuously put those power into that punches rather, and his style suits him. And honestly, it's a tough style to face because he constantly moves forward. However, if he has to move backwards, he doesn't feel odd to him, doesn't feel new, still feels comfortable if he has to fight on the back foot. So Gene Silva beating Bryce Mitchell, I saw it coming. I never thought that Bryce could actually win this fight. And I mean, that should be a testament to how good Gene Silva is. Bryce is not a bum. Okay, Bryce Mitchell is really good. He's good. But he's definitely ranked good. And Gene Silva just disposed of him. And then on to the next fight, Yair Rodriguez, Patricia Pitbull. Patricia Pitbull making his debut. Once, the king of Bellator, definitely regarded at a time as one of the three best featherweights in the world, with him, Volkanovski, and Max Holloway at the time. And Patricia Pitbull then offered Volk, or rather, told Volk, or had a suggestion that they should both put up $1 million, fight one another to see who's the best featherweight of all. Well, not of all time, but rather within the world at that time. I think that Prime Volk leaks on Prime Patricia Pitbull. Now I'm not talking about this Patricia Pitbull. I'm talking about Prime Patricia Pitbull. Prime Volk is something else. However, we saw Patricia Pitbull versus Yair Rodriguez in a fight that I did not for the life of me understand. I picked Yair Rodriguez to win this fight just due to the fact that he's much younger, and I think Patricia Pitbull is past his prime. I think his best years are behind him. His best years was in Bellator. Coming off of a win, prior to that win, had two losses. Just felt like Yair Rodriguez would win this fight. I thought his kicking would be a problem, and I thought he would really work on his biggest weakness, on the aspect of his fighting where he is considered to be susceptible to lose a fight, which was his wrestling and his grappling. And if you had to ask Yair Rodriguez, you know, going into this fight, the ideal fight, he would have told you exactly how this fight ended up taking place. With him on the outside, just punishing Patricia Pitbull. With Patricia Pitbull unable to really find a solid entry, got caught whenever he entered, had sometimes had the better of exchanges, but Yaya was never in any real danger at all. We saw Patricia Pitbull take Yaya down, with Yaya being able to stand up, and then we saw Yaya clipping Pitbull in the third round, potentially ending the fight. Obviously didn't, but if you had to ask Yair Rodriguez how would he like this fight playing out, he would have told you the exact way that the fight ended up playing out. With him on the outside, utilizing his kicks, one of the best kickers we have ever seen within the UFC, utilizing his kicks, using his kicks to set up his punches, and then basically sometimes fighting on the counter, fighting on the back foot whenever Patricia enters, never be in any real danger. This fight was exactly what Yair wanted. How this fight played out was exactly what Yair wanted. And the fact, I think, this is just how I deduced what I saw. I think Patricia Pitbull wanted to showcase how good he was by giving Yair the exact fight he wants and still beating him. I think that was in Pitbull's mind. He wanted to fight Yair's fight and beat him at his own game, just to show how good he is. And it backfired. It backfired. Did not go the way Patricio, thought that it was gonna go. I mean, he basically sacrificed the first round. The first round in a 3 round fight, 33%, ended up losing 33% of the fight, just due to it didn't throw anything, and was basically just calculating, looking at Yaya's tendencies, looking at his kicks, trying to solve that puzzle, and sacrifice the first round. And then in the second round, when he actually got his hands on Yair, realized, oh, this this is not what I felt at Bellator. This is a different level. And I think we saw that Yair Rodriguez is on a different level. And this is probably the best Yair Rodriguez performance I've seen in my life. Not even when he fought Josh Emmett and ended up winning the interim belt. I don't think he was as impressive as he was in this Patricio Pitbull fight. He just looked untouchable. Looked like he could have gone for 10 rounds and still beat Patricio Pitbull 10 rounds to none. Really an impressive performance by Yair Rodriguez. And he was calling out for a title fight. I don't think he gets the next title fight. I think Movsar Evloev should probably get that fight. He wants to fight in September. I think Volk has mentioned that he wants to fight earlier than that. So I don't think Yair is getting the next title fight at 145. However, with that being said, just a really impressive performance by Yair Rodriguez. Picked Yair to win the fight. I said via decision. Went to a decision. I felt, yeah, I was soothsayer. I could see, predict the future. And then we headed to the co-main event, Michael Chandler versus Paddy Pimblett. And I thought this was the easiest one to pick. I said, this felt like the easiest prediction. I had Paddy Pimblett winning this fight. Just felt like Michael Chandler will end up having good moments, but he'll tire himself, wear himself out, just due to the fact that his way of fighting isn't sustainable. If this goes, 5 rounds, there's no way Michael Chandler wins this fight. I did think that it would go, 4 or 5 rounds. I don't think Paddy would beat Michael as convincingly as he did. I didn't predict that. And Paddy Pimblett's a problem. Paddy Pimblett is really good, and I've always thought that Paddy was good. I didn't feel like he speaks a lot about how the goalpost just keeps on moving whenever it comes to him and his fighting ability. Whenever he beats someone, people make an excuse for it and say, "Yo, that guy wasn't as good." I've never felt that way. I've always felt like Paddy is really good and well rounded. A good striker, has a granite chin, really good Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, has good grappling, and I just thought that he was, due to his fight IQ, due to the fact that he just had more ways to win, felt like he would beat Michael Chandler, and didn't think it would be in the manner that he did. An incredible performance. Ended up calling out Arman Sarukian, Dustin Poirier, Justin Gaethje, and Charles Oliveira. And well, obviously, let's just say Paddy's gonna be competitive in all of them, and I honestly think he wins most of them. He wins most of those fights. That call out he made, those four opponents, I think he wins three. He beats three out of those four opponents. There's one I think he has a problem with, and I'll get into that probably tomorrow. But yeah, just Paddy Pimblett, really impressive. Afterwards, we saw Colby Covington trying to stay relevant, saying things to Paddy in Paddy's post fight interview. Um, yeah, and Colby just doing Colby things. But Paddy Pimblett is, I think he is a top five lightweight. Will he ever be able to beat Islam? I don't know. Um, I think as he evolves, he could be a big problem in the lightweight division. If he ends up fighting either Charles, Justin, or Arman, he wins that fight. The guy is a genuine problem, and I think he could potentially beat Islam Makhachev if he continuously evolves and if he continues to be on this trajectory that he is. I think we had to be insane to think that Paddy wouldn't be really competitive or better than anyone in the top five right now. And then we saw the main event. Then we saw Alexander Volkanovski take on Diego Lopes. Alexander Volkanovski, who had a year layoff from the sport, took a time to regain some confidence, just to reset and take everything for what it is. gain his confidence back, and we saw Volk prior to this year layoff. We saw him lose in devastating fashion versus Islam Makhachev versus Ilia Topuria, and a lot of people thought that Volk is washed, and I don't think he was washed. I just thought that as devastating as those losses were, I thought that he wouldn't be able to bounce back after that. Also, with time and age being a factor, father time takes its toll. Well, there's rent to be due, and if you don't pay it, father time would evict you. And I thought Volk was gonna get evicted due to the way that he lost, the way he got knocked out against Islam, the way he got knocked out against Ilya. I thought that his chin wasn't what it used to be, just due to degradation. I felt like I still felt like he could be the pressure fighter Volk, be the prime Volk with regards to his fighting style, with regards to how he applies pressure, how he utilizes, his long arms for his physique, use his long arms, have a good jab, apply pressure, catch his opponent on the counter, clinch, try and wrestle, try and wear his opponent down. I thought he would still be able to fight in that manner. However, my conclusion was that he would fight in that manner. When he gets caught, it'd be over. I don't think that his chin would be able to withstand what it used to in the past when he fought Holloway, when he fought Ortega, when he fought Yair Rodriguez. And I picked Brian. I picked Diego Lopes to win this fight. I thought that eventually Volk would get clipped, and when he got clipped, he would get knocked out. That was my prediction. Is Volk will look good. He will fight in the way that he's always fought. However, he would get caught and the fight will be over. And then in the second round, it almost happened. The first round, I thought, okay, this is exactly what I saw. I saw Volk being dominant. I saw him fight this fight, making it difficult for Diego Lopes by circling and by having, Volk-like movement, Volk-like foot movement, the way he circles to the one side. As soon as you think you have it figured out, he circles to the other. Just basically makes it impossible to read his movement. I saw this. And then in the second round, when Diego clipped him, I thought this is over. When Volk survived that, as happy as a daisy, because I somewhat, I, I want to say I somewhat knew. Listen, I don't know anything. But it felt like when Volk survived that, I thought he was winning this fight. It looked like his chin held up, and he got caught. In this fight, he got caught by some devastating punches. The one uppercut he ate, the right uppercut he ate, I think it was in the fourth round, landed as flush as you could possibly ask for if you're Diego Lopes. And Volk just chowed it. A really impressive performance, a record-breaking, worthy performance from Alexander Volkanovski. And I spoke to one of my mates. I asked him, "Listen, do you think Prime Volk beats Ilya?" And even my mate, who I don't think he's a much of an Ilya fan, he said that he doesn't think so. Yeah, honestly, and I don't feel that way either. Just Volk leaves a lot of openings, and he does get caught. And listen, Ilya hits harder than Diego Lopes. As nasty as Diego is, really like Diego Lopes, like the way he fights, I genuinely like his demeanor. Just seems like a chill guy. I genuinely like Diego Lopes. Ilya's power, is something that I haven't really seen matched with his technicality. So we've seen the power when we look at like Jeremy Stevens or Josh Emmett, especially within the featherweight division. But that's just raw power. It's not power, mixed with technique. Where Diego has a lot of power, not as technical. Josh Emmett has a lot of power, not as technical. Jeremy Stevens had a lot of power, not as technical. Where Ilya is, the mixture between power and technicality. And with the openings Volk leave, I think I think Ilya if Ilya catches him, I think it's over. However, yeah, Volk's back. We're probably gonna see Volk versus Movsar Evloev next. Just genuinely happy. Putting the exclamation mark on what was a good UFC event. Just a genuinely fun, exciting UFC event with a lot of good fights, good storylines. That main event just ended up putting the exclamation mark on it, and what I thought was an insane event. Then we saw fight of the night, few bonuses. I think Volk and Diego Lopes fight was fight of the night, and yeah, genuinely satisfied. Looking forward to UFC 315, UFC 316. That's it for today, though. Let me know in the comment section which fight did you enjoy the most, which result shocked you the most, and which fight did you feel like was fight of the night. And then you can also just please comment Volk, as we've seen, from the land down under, he regained his title. Have a beautiful day.